Welcome back to Kimchi Redneck Kitchen, because we can't really go outside at the moment.
Well, we could go outside, we just can't eat in anywhere, so
we're cooking at home.
And today we're cooking what I think is probably one of Chuck's absolute favorite of the Korean soups. You order it a lot.
I do. That would be Yukgaejang.
So Yukgaejang is a...
That's for the text. You can put the text on the screen.
Okay, I'll put the text on the screen.
All right, so Yukgaejang Spicy Beef Soup. Biggest ingredient, fern break. No, I'm kidding. Beef.
They're all going, what the hell is a fern break?
It's a gochugaru.
We'll get back to that in a minute.
But we got beef. We've got to say shiny beef brisket.
Which we have too much of, so Chuck is going to cut that down real quick.
We got another recipe we're cooking this weekend, so I probably shouldn't be gesticulating at the camera with a knife, but...
So, beef brisket in Korean is called yangjimori. Yangjimori.
Sounds like the bad guy from a video game.
Yangjimori! He took out your people, your whole family. Our recipe that we're using is actually a conglomerate of about 3 or 4 different recipes because I liked pieces of each of them, and...
It's a Franken recipe. We've actually got a couple of those coming up where we're like, well, I like this from this recipe and that from that recipe. And we did the entitled white person thing and just took what we wanted from all of them.
Wow. Chuck is going to cut this brisket down to about 1 pound, and then he's going to cut it into strips about 3 inches long so that they'll cook a little bit faster when we cook it. But the very first thing we're going to do with that brisket is we're going to soak it to get some of the blood and stuff out of that before we actually move that into our cooking it for our stock.
Right.
So while he cuts that, I'm going to talk to you guys about gochugaru, or fern break, which is a mountain vegetable, which is high in protein and also in dietary fiber. Then it's often used in soups and side dishes for Asian cooking. It has a deep, earthy flavor. You can get it fresh, you can get it dried or pre-soaked. Once we open this, I'm probably going to rinse this out, and then it'll go in with the rest of the stuff when we're blanching, so we're good to go.
So part of the recipe later on is you're supposed to shred or cut the meat with the grain. So kind of, you got to cut it now so that you have grain to work with later. So we're going to go, fortunately that's pretty much straight across. That'll leave us grain going that way.
Okay.
This is a thicker bit. That's a little bit thinner. I'm going to say about there.
The good news is you do have to cut it into strips anyways. By the way, we are live in front of a studio audience today. I'll pop up the picture of our studio audience, and we apparently have a guest in the kitchen. Sookie Dog has made a guest appearance.
0.91 ounces. Or
that'll work.
0.91
All right, so
pounds.
don't you want to cut that a little bit smaller for soaking?
Oh, well, yeah. So basic purpose of cutting these into chunks is literally just so that they cook faster and get tender faster. Because some recipes tell you have to cook this stuff for like 2 or 3 hours. Some recipes tell you if you cut it down, you can cook it for like an hour.
So for us, we're cutting it down, we're soaking it, and then rinsing it and draining it, and then putting it in for our stock, and it's going to be about 1 hour to 1.5 hours. We want to be able to shred it. So
right.
We're going to add water to that, soak that, and then we will be back. All right, guys, we're back. We've got our meat, and it is been soaked for 10 to 20 minutes. We've drained it as well as, sorry, there's a little extra water in there, as well as rinsed it. So you want to make sure that you put it into your water. We've got about, this is actually 11 cups of water because we made a decision today. We have decided. We are actually going to wait to eat this tomorrow. So it's a little bit later in the day than what we had planned, and we also had to make a quick run to the grocery store to pick up some other options that we knew we didn't have. So, one of those being this wonderful soup bag. So, we are going to assemble our soup bag. All right, so in one of these, I'm going to put our onion because this will make it easier when it is time for me to take the onion out, and I won't have to like dig it out and it won't disintegrate into everything all over the place. So, that's one thing I like about a soup bag. It makes your life a little bit easier. So, 1 whole onion in the soup bag into the stock. Then in the other one, we are going to need 5 to 7 whole garlic cloves. What did we decide on how many we were going to do, Chuck?
Let's go 7.
And
let's go full garlic.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we also need peppercorn, which I happen to have right here. We're going to want 1 tablespoon of that. They will go in with our garlic. Probably could have put all that in one bag together, but I didn't want to crowd the garlic too much.
Also, considering the level of the water in that pot, you didn't want to get too much stuff in one bag that wouldn't fit in the water.
All right, so we've got our onions in, we've got our garlic in, we've got our peppercorn in. We are going to bring this up to a boil and then let it simmer for about an hour to an hour and a half. The goal of this point is, one, we're making our stock, and two, we are actually trying to cook the beef. So we want the beef to cook so that when we pull it out, it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah, you want to be able to hand shred it.
Hand shredding beef. That's the plan. Current game plan is to let this boil, bring this up to a boil, and then we'll put it down to a simmer. It's going to be on for an hour and a half. We are either very smart people or very stupid people, because we decided, since we weren't going to finish this recipe tonight, that we would work on another video that we had in the works, didn't we, Chuck?
Yes.
And that video involved
It's a little bit of...
a little bit alcohol. A little bit. Actually, in my case, it was really little bit, but apparently my tolerance is also very little. But we expected that, because I don't think I've had a drink in...
years.
Yeah, I think the Buck Bunjo was the last thing I drank, and I only had like a third of that bottle, so it wasn't like that was going to hit me hard. Yeah, so, plus we got red cap soju, so hey. Hey, y'all. Anyways, we're at the point where we want to check the status of our beef. So, I'm going to take the lid off, which, by the way, this smells really fabulous. I can smell the black peppercorn in it, and I can smell the seasonings in it, and it's just a really wonderful flavor. It's smelling fabulous. All right. So,
We got our beef bubbling there.
oh yeah, that needs more time.
Still a bit stiff.
Yeah, normally if it's going to be really soft, what you'd see is like when I go to pinch it, it would start to pull pieces of it off, but it is still really stiff. So we are going to let that keep on bubbling for a while. One of the recipes that we looked at did mention boiling it for 2 hours. Now this is on a simmer, so she meant boil it and then put it on a simmer for 2 hours. So we're only at about an hour here, so I'm thinking give it another half an hour and check it.
Sounds good.
For now, though, we'll finish my beer in a ball jar. This is not a mason jar. This is a ball jar. I like ball.
I don't know. They're all just jars to me.
All right, so it's time to pull the beef out.
So if you can see, the beef is a bit squishy now.
No, you cannot see anything. It just completely fogged up that entire thing. I can't even see you. Give it a second. Okay.
Well, now, if you can see the beef, it's kind of squishy.
Yeah.
So that means it is good and cooked and will...
We'll shred very easily.
I think the rest of that is just
our broth?
just our broth and our
bags?
our bags.
All right.
So
now the beef will sit aside for a while, and then we will shred it. And then we're probably going to let the broth sit in it overnight and come back to it in the morning, because that makes a good broth.
yeah, we'll pull the bags out in a bit, but
Yeah, there we go. Good morning, we're back. It's another day.
it's another day.
So, I want to show you where our status is. We have 10 cups of our beef stock, which smells fabulous, by the way. We've got our shredded beef. Now, if you want yours maybe a little bit smaller, you can obviously cut it into smaller strips, but that's where we are for that. And then our gosari was already pre-moistened, so I guess it was ready to go. But I went ahead and rinsed it. It has a very strong, earthy smell, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's definitely not... I wouldn't wear it as a cologne, let's say.
I don't think I would eat it by itself either, but that's just me. Now, I do think... I've read that gosari is also made into a Korean banchan, so they do make it as a side dish.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure it has some seasoning added to it.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
We've got our Korean green onion, the large green onion chopped up. The little green onion is going in our chili oil, so it's been chopped smaller. We've got about 3 ounces here.
3 or 4 ounces.
3 to 4 ounces of shiitake mushrooms cut up. And then we've got 300 grams of mung bean sprouts, because I wasn't weighing it and I wasn't pulling out to figure out the difference.
That's what the bag said.
That's what the bag says. That's what we got. That's what we're using. So our pot, because we are going to do this all in one pot. Now, I know this might be impressive for you guys, because normally, Chuck's a 75 pot and 75 dish person. I'm trying to reserve kitchen energy. So we're doing it in one pot. So I moved the stock over here, which, yes, dirties up that bowl, but I will use that bowl again. So we are boiling. So the current plan at this point is to blanch the fresh vegetables. We blanch these vegetables so that it soaks in, it keeps it from losing its flavor, its crispness, all of that. So that's what we're doing. They go in and literally, this is going to sound crazy, but it's going to be about 10 seconds at a time.
When they come out, do they just go into a strainer or do they go into an ice bath?
They go into a strainer and then they get rinsed in cold water.
Okay.
All right.
So I know some things you have to blanch and then you have to immediately drop them into like ice water or something, but
So
I don't know.
give that just a second because I got to move the gochugaru out of the way. It's probably been about 10 seconds. We're going to go ahead.
That's about 10.
And then in between, I'm just going to make sure that I get it back up to boiling before I put the next veg in. Just.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm rinsing those. And then this is going to sound weird, but you want to dry them too.
Just roll them out on a paper towel or
I'm
something?
going to put them on a paper towel. My rice cooker takes up some of my counter space.
Which we're just kind of going to roll it out on the counter here, it looks like.
All right, here we
That's
go.
how we roll.
And I'll probably put another paper towel on top of it to kind of pull some of that liquid out. So that's starting to boil. I also pulled all the liquid out of this.
So I'm going to dump that back in a bowl.
I'm just going to stick it in the
Or
strainer.
one of those things.
Yep, let's stick it in the strainer for now. And we're boiling. So our green onions are going in.
And that's turning a very green color, so that's generally...
Yeah, so it also, the blanching is going to save that color, so we want to keep that color.
So if anybody has any problems eating their green veggies, if you blanch them like that, they become really green, so that makes them extra green. Then you eat less of them.
Your extra green veg.
Yes.
All right, we're boiling again. We got our green onions over here to dry. We're going to drop our mushrooms in.
Shiitake.
We're going to make a chili oil. Now you can buy a chili oil. They do actually sell it. I think I actually have a chili oil in my cabinet, but I want to make the chili oil that goes with this. It's relatively easy to do. So what you're going to use is 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You could probably use canola oil or vegetable oil. This is going to be on a low heat. 3 tablespoons of sesame oil. Probably one of the reasons for that low heat and for the mixture of the 2 oils is because sesame oil will smoke fast. So remember that. So the next part that we're going to do, and that also, you can go ahead and you can actually start smelling that sesame oil. Do you smell it?
Yep.
I can smell it. So then we are going to do, it's 3 to 4 tablespoons of gochugaru.
We're going to start with 3.
We're going to start with 3, and then we're going to reserve that last tablespoon for at the table if we need to add more.
Normally with Korean recipes, we actually kind of have the amount that they recommend for the spice and start from there. But this is supposed to be a spicy beef soup, so we're going to start with 3/4.
Okay, so there's 3 in, my wooden spoon. So the purpose of just putting the gochugaru in there by itself first to make that chili oil is to give it time to start. Ooh, woo! There you go, I can smell that. Add the green onions.
Yeah, if it starts to smoke faster than you expect, because we're on fire and fire heats stuff up quick, start throwing in something with some liquid content. Onions is a good option.
To that, I'm going to add our salt and pepper.
You can smell that.
I told you could. 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper and 1 teaspoon of salt. So go ahead and mix that salt in.
So conversely, and I think what may have been a slightly better idea, is Maangchi mixes all of her stuff together into one pot, all of her oil and her gochugaru and her seasonings and whatnot. We may should have done that and then thrown that into the pot so we didn't have to...
Possibly. But I do like the idea of this having its own opportunity for the gochugaru to start to develop more of its flavor. I know that sounds crazy that I want gochugaru to develop more of its flavor, but I do.
Well, that's what I
think
mean.
that's what the oil is doing.
You mix all the stuff together in the bowl and then you add that to the pot on low heat and let it all cook together.
Well, no, because in a minute we're going to add fish sauce and we're going to add soy sauce to it and turn it up a little bit and let it get a little more liquid to it. So it has not lost its liquid ability.
All right, so let's step in the kitchen here.
So that gochugaru has soaked up our oil along with the green onions, which it was supposed to do. In just a few minutes, I'm going to be adding a 1/2 tablespoon of fish sauce. Sungkyung Longest actually puts anchovy fillets in there. I'm not doing that.
We don't do anchovies.
We don't do anchovies, but I will do the fish sauce because the fish sauce will give it some flavor and it is made from anchovies.
At least in small doses.
But it won't kill either of us, which is the game plan. And then I'm also going to add soup soy sauce. If you've seen our pantry staples, you'll know that they make soy sauce that is a little bit lighter and a little bit saltier, and it's made specifically for soups. So this is a soup soy sauce. And we'll be adding that. So I'm going to let this cook for just a minute just so I can get these green onions cooked down just a little bit. So we'll come back in just a minute before we add the fish sauce and the soup sauce. And we don't want to forget, because I almost forgot, one of the most important things is our minced garlic. We've got 8 cloves that we're putting in.
We use the pre-minced stuff because, well, it's just easier. So what are we using for an equivalency of a clove of garlic?
Half a teaspoon is what I've gotten as the equivalency with minced.
A half teaspoon. So for 8 cloves, that's going to be 4 teaspoons of garlic.
Yeah.
Thereabouts?
Yeah, I just used 8 half teaspoons.
All right, that's what we're going with.
So before I turn this up to a medium heat, we're going to go ahead and add our soup soy sauce and our fish sauce. So we need 3 tablespoons of the soup soy sauce.
Oh, and before you pour, in case anybody was wondering, this is what our stuff looks like. The green onions are wilting. The garlic is slightly browned.
The garlic is fragrant.
And it is very fragrant. So now we're going to mix our stuff.
All right, so that's 3 tablespoons of soup soy sauce. So half a tablespoon of the fish sauce, and I'm going to mix. All right, so now the instructions are to let it bubble and cook for about a minute.
All right, so I have tagged back in.
This is a tag team effort today because we want to make sure you can see what's going on in the pot.
All right, so we're trying not to burn this stuff here because it's sitting here just bubbling away.
And it's ready, Chuck. It's ready for your beef and your veg mix. Are you ready for the beef and the veg mix?
I don't know if I'm ready for this, but here we go. So first off, we got gochugaru.
Gochugaru!
1, because this is both moist and wet.
It's going in first.
It's moist and cool, so it's going in first because this stuff, we got to mix this stuff up and I don't want to burn myself. So that goes in.
All right, what you got next for us?
All right, next we got meat.
All right.
We got beef from yesterday. And this is room temperature. We just set it out and let it wait.
So the game plan at this point is to continue to mix that chili oil into everything that's going in. It's probably going to cool off a little bit as the colder stuff gets in here, and then we can put gloves on and mix.
Yep. So next up we got mushrooms and green onions.
Yeah, they're all kind of mixed together.
All right, and then last up we got
mung bean sprouts.
Mung bean sprouts and whatever else I didn't get out of this bowl.
All right, Chuck. I will mix while you get a... So if you don't want to get your hands in there with gloves on, which we don't have a problem with.
Well, I'm double bagging.
He's double bagging. We're going to use... You can also use the spoon, the wooden spoon to do it, but remember the wooden spoon is going to hold on to some of that stuff. So we're going to actually get rid of that, and then I'm going to stick the wooden spoon directly into our stock.
Ah, good. Bottom of the pot is still hot. Don't touch that. If you got any big clumps of something, try to spread them out. All right, this pot is heating back up.
All right, so now what we're going to do, Chuck, is you're going to take your glove off, and then that delicious, beautiful stock is going to go in.
All right. I hate pouring stuff. Nothing ever pours correctly. This thing has a spout. Why is it running down the bottom of the bowl?
It's okay. You didn't lose much.
It's defective.
You didn't lose much. All right, then I'm going to mix everything in. All right, Chuck, how's it looking? Chuck is our expert on Yukgaejang. So by colors, how's our color?
Well, it looks pretty good at the moment.
All right, so get you guys a close-up of that. Now we are going to bring this to a boil over high heat.
Rule of thumb with one of these things, I find, whatever they say go to at least one step below it because it cooks fast. Fire is hot. Never underestimate it.
Got it. All right, so we're bringing this to a boil.
And there's
and we'll be back.
a top thingy somewhere.
So we decided Chuck is going to take a quick taste of the soups to make sure that we have the right amount, or we don't need more. Do we need that other tablespoon?
Let it cook. I can taste the heat in it. We might need to add a little bit of it, like at the table, but that's got enough heat to it that I think it's got enough heat that you'll taste it, but not enough that you can't eat it at the moment. So
what you're saying, for you could add more for you, but for my purposes, you're choosing not to add any more right now.
Yeah, I could go for the 4th tablespoon in mine, but I wouldn't, for your heat level, I wouldn't go more than another half a tablespoon.
What's half a tablespoon at, Chuck?
Are you feeling saucy?
I'm feeling saucy. Because even if I can't eat it, you can. Huh. First thing I pulled out was a half a tablespoon. Useful, eh? Never be one to say that I deny you your heat. Right? Besides, I know that if we cook the flavor in now, it'll taste better than adding it in at the table. Right?
Probably.
Dang, we close. Good thing I got that other bag of gochugaru. All right, so half a tablespoon in. So that puts us at 3.5. I give that a mix.
Swishy, swishy, it's spicy bath time. Now we wait for it to boil
Yes,
and let it simmer.
30 minutes. Well, boil it and then simmer for 30 minutes.
Yes. All right, so we are at the table. We have cooked the stuff.
I can throw up a picture of what it looked like in the pot before we pulled it out. So I did take a picture of that, so I'll do that.
And a picture of what it looks like sitting here on the table.
Absolutely. So one thing to note, this is typically just served with kimchi. So when we were at the grocery store the other day, we found like this literally, from probably Koreans, it's one serving of kimchi. For us, it's probably 2.
Or 3.
Or 3.
We don't generally eat a whole lot.
We don't eat a whole lot, but we do eat kimchi.
But we also found...
Chuck found this one.
Which is, again, it's a relatively small thing of kimchi, but this is a resealable container. So if you don't eat a lot of kimchi, you can get one of these, and then you can probably get these little ones and just throw it in here. So
yeah, so
there you go.
This is going back in the fridge because we're not eating that today, but we will.
And just to be somewhat homage-y, maybe, it looks like an old kimchi pot.
It does look like a kimchi pot. Oh my goodness, the thing is hard to get into today. Help. They were offended that we couldn't eat it all in one sitting. It didn't want to let us in. The soup has cooked for probably about a half an hour on low. It was still boiling a little bit, so
Maybe even 45 minutes because I was watching YouTube.
He was watching YouTube, and I was doing some editing, so we might have been a little bit distracted in between that, but that's okay.
Whoever sealed this was...
This was so super sealed, it's hard to get into.
They were serious about their
They're
job.
like, your kimchi will never escape, Chuck. All right, so our kimchi has finally escaped. Let's hope it tastes good. So one of the things to note about this is the bright red color that it comes with. And again, I'll throw up another picture of it so you can just see, because it's kind of hard for you guys to see our soup right here. The main thing you serve it with is just the kimchi and rice. They typically tell you to dump your rice bowl into the soup. You can also eat your rice and eat your soup together. It's pretty much your choice how you do that. So what do you see there, Chuck? How's it looking? You're the expert here. This is actually, I've only ever tasted this a couple times.
Well, so far it's not quite as bright red as I'm used to, but then again we were aiming for that because we were...
Look at mine.
Well, yours a little redder than mine. Mine's a little darker. The veggies look pretty good in it. Those big 2-inch cuts of onions, if you don't like big chunks of onion like that, you could
cut them in half.
Cut them in half long ways before you throw them in.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like them like that. She probably would have liked them sliced a little more.
Yeah.
Let's see how this broth tastes. Okay, I could go for a little more gochugaru.
All right, was a good thing that I have just a little more gochugaru there.
You can tell it's in there, but it's not...
I did stir it before I served it.
It's not bitey hot, which is good because we don't want bitey hot.
So we should have used the full 4?
We probably should have went for the full 4. I'm surprised. Normally the amount of gochugaru they tell us to put into a dish is enough to melt your lips.
See this, guys? Not going to listen to that one again later.
I mean, it's not bad. There's some heat to it. You can taste it.
Oh, aren't you glad I told you to put the other half in now?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to taste the broth.
But it does have a good deep taste to it. You can taste the fern break, but the fern break doesn't taste quite like it smells. Because honestly, it smells a lot like
dirt,
wet bush, like just wet plant. But it does have a nice flavor in the soup. Check the mushrooms.
Mushrooms are good.
Now, one thing I would say is that we should have
added
probably,
more veggie?
I was going to say probably put a little more beef in there, because once you shred the beef up, it kind of, you can find it, but it disappears in the strands that is almost impossible to tell against the fern break.
Yeah, you can't really see the beef again. I was looking when I was serving it, like, am I getting beef in his serving here? I hope so.
So it's in there, but it's kind of hard to see.
We may have also used more gosari than we should have.
Possibly.
And that might be because that was all in one bag and I wasn't going to use it for anything else.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. The amount of like mung bean and gosari that's in here is not a problem. I'm just thinking we probably should have used a little more beef because we were a little under the 1 pound we were supposed to use. We were at like 0.9 pounds.
We were at 0.9.
Honestly, we should have probably done more like a 1 1/4 or 1.5 pounds and cut it into bigger strips so we could see it. Still tastes good though.
Oh, it tastes fabulous. I just got a bite of that.
The mung beans have their little crunch to them. The green onions soak up that beef and gochujang flavor marvelously.
And of course, the green onion is super strong, so it's going to give that extra little kick to it as well. So if you hit that with some of the spice, that's going to definitely give a kick to you.
So there's 2 basic ways to eat this. One is the way she's done it, where you just dump your rice in with everything and eat it all together as kind of a stew. The other thing you can kind of do is eat your chunks, basically. You can eat your chunks as kind of a soup, and then when you get down to where you have nothing but broth left, then you can dump your rice in and do it that way. So,
And which do you think is the right way?
it depends on how you're feeling at the moment. If you want to taste more of the vegetable, more of the beef, eat it as a soup first and then mix your rice in later. If you want more of a stew, you want more of a heavy feeling meal, then mix it in with everything.
And the interesting thing is, I really did think that the mushrooms were going to get lost in this because there weren't very many of them.
Yeah, I kind of thought they were just, even though I cut them kind of thick, I thought they were just going to disappear.
I thought they were going to shrivel up and die, but they actually are there and they're good.
Lego my kimchi. That is not a name brand I ever want to hear.
Lego my kimchi.
Lego my kimchi. For a first attempt, even though we Frankensteined some recipes together, we learned a few things along the way, but pretty good. I would not be upset to have this.
Good, because there's got to be leftovers.
Good, because I'm on night shift and I need my soups.
I would say this, Maangchi's recipe is a much quicker way to make it, and if you want it and you want it quick, then go that way. But I think building the flavors for me was the right way to go, because I think the patience in it, that it does take a little bit more time. It is a little bit more difficult. I think it does build a little more flavor.
There's very little difference between Maangchi's recipe and some of the other ones other than the cook times. I think you honestly could stick 90% to Maangchi's recipe and then just cook everything longer.
And honestly, you could use that beef stock for other things. So if you made a bunch of beef stock, go that way as well. Other people may say, don't have the gosari, but the gosari does add a very good texture and flavor to it.
It's pretty much an integral part of it, in my opinion, because if you made it without it and you just put, what do they say, put like more green onions or something?
Yeah.
You would miss that undertone.
So it may be harder to find in your area, but it is available dried. And again, Maangchi's recipe, which will be in there'll be a link to that in there. It tells you how to rehydrate your fern break, your gosari, so that you can use it. And honestly, I do think it's worth it to have in there.
I'm saying the dried stuff, I'm pretty sure you can order off Amazon or whatever.
That's what I was figuring. So. Ooh.
Got a spicy bit on it, dangling thing in my throat.
So you're happy?
I like it. We are going to finish our lunch. Y'all have fun. We'll see you next time. Do the internet stuff. Like, subscribe. Was there anything else? Leave a comment. Those are always good.
He really loves your comments. Thanks for watching, guys.
See y'all next time.